Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. If you are new to the channel, you picked a great first episode to listen to. Our guest tonight is Brenda Bridges. Brenda is a certified divorce coach. She's written a book called Oh Shit, I'm Getting Divorced: How to Maintain the Process with Grace and Dignity, or go through the process with grace and dignity. She has been doing this now for a while. She's got a ton of resources. She's going to talk about what she's learned. She's going to talk about the process. She's going to share all sorts of good information. Hopefully, if you are in the situation that you need a divorce, or you're in the process of getting divorced, you could reach out to Brenda and her team. Not judgmental in any way, not telling you what you are, that you're good or bad for doing what you do. She has a really great approach. We love speaking with her, and we wanted to make sure you guys heard directly from her what she's learned. So that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, let's bring Brenda onto the channel now. Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. If you are new to the channel, you picked a great first episode to listen to. Our guest tonight is Brenda Bridges. Brenda is a certified divorce coach. She's written a book called Oh Shit, I'm Getting Divorced: How to Maintain the Process with Grace and Dignity, or go through the process with grace and dignity. She has been doing this now for a while. She's got a ton of resources. She's going to talk about what she's learned. She's going to talk about the process. She's going to share all sorts of good information. Hopefully, if you are in the situation that you need a divorce, or you're in the process of getting divorced, you could reach out to Brenda and her team. Not judgmental in any way, not telling you what you are, that you're good or bad for doing what you do. She has a really great approach. We love speaking with her, and we wanted to make sure you guys heard directly from her what she's learned. So that's what we're going to do. So without further ado, let's bring Brenda onto the channel now. Brenda, thank you so much for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk.
I am really excited to be here. This will be fun.
Yeah. You and I had a great conversation several months ago now, and then through a series, life has happened to both of us on both sides. And so we had to kind of keep moving our meeting around, but I've been very excited to have you on because one of our podcast is about people. We want people to live meaningful, purposeful lives, and that's it. That's the whole point of it. There's a
Hmm.
lot of people that are anxious and nervous and don't feel good or don't feel happy, and it's because they're not taking control of their situation and pursuing the things that they want. And one of the tenets that we preach is life is about relationships and experiences much more than it's about money or assets or looking cool or all the other
Our
jazz.
success in big
Yeah.
air quotes.
Yeah, right. What it looks like on Instagram, all that jazz. Relationships are very, very important. And you are kind of an expert in dealing with relationships when they're not at their best. And so I've been very excited to have you on because you've got a personal story to talk about and then your professional experiences that you can talk about as well. And I think there's just a great conversation for our audience to listen to there. So very happy to have you on. With that said, would you mind just giving a little bit of your background and then we can just jump right into our conversation?
Oh, how far back do we go?
It's your
Um,
choice. It's your show.
there we go. So I have a career-wise varied background, but it all makes sense getting me to where I am now. I started in advertising and marketing, then I was a small business owner, I had my own marketing firm. I got a master's degree in special education, and for a while thought that I was going to be in that sort of a classroom rather than this sort of a classroom. Um, let's see what else. I became a yoga teacher. I was home with my kids for many, many years doing volunteering, PTAing, soccer momming, all of those things. Um, and then my then husband lost his job, and I was teaching yoga and momming, and just looked around and said, well, I don't think yoga is going to put these kids through college, and there are no benefits, and we're a family that needs that. And so I became a financial advisor, which was kind of a big pivot from
Mm.
yoga instructor. And then about a year and a half after that, he was still not working and came home one morning and said, I'm done, I'm out. which then started the whole divorce process, and it was miserable, often needlessly so.
Mm,
But it's the way it is structured, and there's a lot of buy-in to it's got to be bad. And when that was all over, I kind of took a look around and said, what can I do to help make this process better for other people? What have I learned? What can I share? Like, how can I use this really bad experience to move forward and help others just not go through it the same way? And I would never say divorce is good. You know, some people, there's a woman in a networking group I'm in, and last week she came up to me and she goes, I don't believe in divorce. Like, okay, I don't endorse divorce, but divorce is going to happen if one
right.
person wants a divorce. At least under current law, that could change. Um, so if people are going to go through this thing and separate their lives, separate their families, separate their finances, it became my mission or my passion to figure out like what are the ways we can do this better. And that's still, I spent a little time this morning working on exactly that. Like we have a process that's been trademarked that helps people go through the divorce process.
Mm,
And I spent some time with my friend ChatGPT, just really brainstorming on what else can we do? How can we make this better? How can we improve this process that really does suck? It's a bad process,
yeah,
but it's inevitable for some people. So how do we not make it as bad? So that is my where I came from professionally.
that's awesome. It's an awesome recap. Let me rephrase my statement there, lest I revel in your painful experiences. It's not what I was trying to do there.
Go ahead. It's fine.
Oh my
I
goodness.
learned a lot. I learned a lot. It was
Yeah,
a very eye-opening experience. Causes a lot. It can go different ways. It can cause you to really get introspective and rethink your life, or it can cause some people to get angry and bitter and mired in the experience and give up. We all make choices.
yeah. It's funny because I talk about experience a lot, and I have so I'm 53, and I have a ton of experience. And the problem is, experience is generally something you get right after you need it.
Yep.
And so, I'm fortunate. My wife and I have been married for 32 years, and
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks so much. I argue that, and obviously I think I'm right, or I wouldn't argue it, but the single biggest decision you make that has the biggest impact on your life is who you choose to spend it with. Is your spouse more important than your career, more important than where you live? Because if you have the right person, you can figure anything out. And if you're with the wrong person, it can make it exceedingly difficult, even if all those other factors are really good. And look, just before it sounds like I'm sitting in my ivory tower casting judgment on those who have gone through divorce, not the case at all. My parents were divorced. I have a sister that was divorced. I have lots of good friends who have been divorced. And many times that's the best choice in the situation you find yourself in. It is what it is. Nobody bats 1,000 in life. I have fucked up
Yeah.
my share of stuff. I
Or life
got the wife
changes.
right.
You know, the person we were when we were 22 is not the person we are when we're 53 necessarily.
That's right.
And if people grow differently, experience different things, sometimes it's not salvageable. And, you know, there's a question that I choose not to participate in because it's discernment. You know, what causes people to decide to divorce? That is not an area I work with people in. When they have decided, then I work with them.
Yeah.
But there are so many different factors. You know, people will stay married and be miserable for religious purposes because they were married in the church and divorce for them is not an option. Other people, it's funny, this was years ago, but I was just remembering it this last week. There was a woman I worked with who was on her second marriage and was talking about her third marriage, but she was still married to the second person. I know. And I was like, wait, explain this to me. And she said, well, I'm not going to be married to him forever. So I'm just kind of thinking about what I want in my third husband. So there are people who look at it as a, I don't know, time limited commitment and everything in between.
Yeah, it's I work in the grocery business, and I always tell people my idea of optimism is the 90-year-old guy in my checkout lane that's buying a gallon of milk. I'm like, that's an optimistic guy right there. I love his optimism that he's gonna make
Hmm.
it through that whole gallon before it's his time. So
Or he has lots of cats or something. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But it's that who you spend your life with, it has such an impact on everything in your world. And so when you wind up at a point where you're like, hey, I've got to make a change, that feels like failure. I've heard that from many people, like, hey, how did this has to be on me, I screwed this up. And there's truth in that in some sense. Like, there's only two people in the relationship, so there's blame.
But both are responsible because of the relationship.
Yeah, right, it is what it is. That's exactly right. And how you react to that, just like anything in life, I think has a fairly significant impact on how you experience it. And so, how do people, when you first interact with folks, like you said, you don't get involved in the whys or the reasons. It's, hey, now the process is going to start.
Mhm.
Let's start working our way through this. How do you have that initial conversation? What's the first thing you try to
That's a
ground
really good
people in?
question. And it's one of my favorite topics because what people usually do is, I guess, their first big mistake. What people usually do is get an attorney and serve their partner.
Mm,
And you can't walk that back. Like that's an aggressive move from the get-go.
mm,
So what I talk to people about is I call it the three P's. And the first one is know your purpose. Come from a place that's goal oriented. So you're not running away from, you're going towards. In other words, instead of like, I hate this marriage. I cannot get through another Thanksgiving or Christmas with this person. I never want to pick up their socks again. This is awful. I need out.
mm,
Think about what do you want your life to look like moving forward? That it sounds like this person is not going to be a part of, or not going to be a part of in the same way in the marriage. So, what's important to you? What are your goals in that life? Is self-sufficiency, is empowerment, is being able to pursue your hobbies. Maybe you love to travel and they hate it and you've been stopped from doing these things. Maybe it's art, maybe who knows what it is. Everyone is individual, but what is important to them moving forward? And especially if they have children, do they want to be going to graduations and weddings together and having it be happy and civil and a differently shaped family? Or do they never want to see them again? And some
mm,
people, that is their true answer. They never want to ever see that person again, ever. And they don't care about, the graduations and the weddings. Whatever actions you take in the divorce process are going to be shaped by those goals. So then the second P is process, figure out and understand where you live, what your options are. So there are many different ways you can go about getting divorced, but it's all mandated by the jurisdiction you live in and where you're going to go through that divorce. So then the second step is take your purpose, your goals, and match it to the process. Know what your options are, and then see what fits your goals. If you want to be at your daughter's wedding together and sit at the same table and walk her down the aisle together, you're probably not going to get a barracuda attorney and litigate.
mm.
It doesn't serve that goal. You're probably going to do an out of court option if you can, mediation or collaborative process. So it's kind of that's like where the triage comes in. This is what your relationship is like. This is the kind of support or process you need. And then your professionals or people That's the third P. So once you figured out your goals and you figured out how you want to go about this, do you want to be in court? Do you want to be out of court? Do you want someone else making the decisions? Do you want guidance in the decisions? Do you feel like you're fully equipped to make your own decisions? Each matches to a different process. And then you find your people to help you do it. So if you decide you want to mediate, then you look for a mediator that is going to support you the way you want to be supported. If you want to go to court, you want to tell your story on a stand, you want an attorney to do the negotiating for you, you're going to find a litigator and someone who really likes to do that as a professional. So that's the starting place, I think should be the starting place for everyone. It doesn't mandate, it's like it's not cookie cutter. It doesn't say
Yeah.
everyone has to go to court or everyone has to mediate. It says, look at your situation, like get real with yourself, and then figure out what best matches what you want your life to look like. That's the very first thing we talk about.
Got it. That yeah, so it's very practical. The
Yeah.
first part is like you gotta kind of, I would assume that this is an emotional experience. People's emotions are heightened when you first interact with them, and that's going to impact their thought process and their approach to life in general. And
Mhm.
you've got to kind of redirect them and say, hey, there is a process that goes with this, and if we're going to make this work as smoothly and as I don't know if easy is the right way to say it, but as smooth, let's just stop it as smoothly as possible with the least amount of friction.
Mhm.
Um, those are the steps. Now, when you're talking about jurisdiction, is that county? Is that state?
Yeah.
Is that city? Does it depend on where you live?
It's all those things.
Mm,
So the state makes the laws, but the counties kind of interpret how those laws are executed. Got to disclaim, not an attorney, do
yeah,
not give legal advice. My area of expertise is financial, mediation, and coaching.
yeah.
So I gotta get that out there as my disclaimer. That being said, it really is, it's very interesting, actually. There are some, I could Google it, but 3,000 and some counties in the United States. And I've heard it said there are 3,000 and some different ways to get divorced.
Of course.
Because even where I am, so I'm located in Chattanooga. I work with people throughout the country, but a lot of my work is local. Hamilton County, where I live, is different than Georgia and the counties there right across 5 minutes from my office, is different than Ray County, which is a bit north of here. The way the judges work, whether it's the type of court, um, it can really vary. And then that's true region to region, city to city, even within the state. So we're all under the same state guidelines. So example might be alimony. Illinois has an alimony formula. So in Illinois, they're going to plug in the income of both parties. They're going to plug in the duration of the marriage. It's going to say this is alimony. There might be some negotiation about it, but there's a shape to it. In Chattanooga, there are things that are taken into account, but there's no formula. So it's a big, like, how do we approach this? What is the norm? In Ohio, the norm is about a third the duration of the marriage for alimony. Where I am, it tends to be about half the duration of the marriage for a longer term marriage, different for a short term marriage. So
Hmm.
you kind of get to know the interpretations, what usually happens in a courtroom, where you live. In Texas, it's getting my understanding from practitioners there is alimony is less and less of a thing, and it's becoming a more short term help get people back on their feet fix, even for long-term marriages. So it's very impacted by the region you're in, where you live. And then every state makes its own laws. You're deciding when you divorce how you're going to parent your kids if they're minors, what the agreement is there. You're deciding how you're going to split up all your assets and liabilities. So what you have, what you owe, how that's going to be divided. And you're deciding who's going to pay for support for the kids, in what way, and is money owed to the lower earning party to help them get by. So those are the decisions essentially that you're making as you're going through the process. And then they're all framed by what the rules are where you live.
Sure.
Make sense?
It does. Absolutely. So, I mean, this is a legal process. It is what it is, but there's, like we've talked about, heightened emotions
Yeah.
involved.
And it
How do you,
is a legal, oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted
no,
you.
no, go ahead. Say what you're
I
going
was
to
going to
say.
say it is a legal process, and this is where some things get really interesting. But the decisions the people are making are not legal decisions. They're making family and financial decisions. So I'm a big proponent of if those are the decisions you're making, get support from financial and family oriented folks, and then let the lawyers write up the agreement.
Yeah, totally agree. And so what I was going to ask, which like you touched on it actually, you as a coach and mediator and a an advisor, how do you encourage people to think about making these decisions? Because it's not your job to decide for
Mm-mm.
them, but you
No.
certainly can help them get into a frame of mind that's going to help them make the best decisions for themselves. How do you do that when like this is clearly one of the most emotional things people go through in their life? How do you coach them to think when they're going through this?
Um, there are so many different scenarios. First, we look at where they are, what process they're going through. It's going to be different if they're working with their former partner to come to an agreement. So they're mediating or doing collaborative process, both out of court. Then a lot of it is giving them both the same information, giving them an idea of, or almost a reality check for what would happen if they did go to court, where they are living, and then give them scenarios and choices to choose from. And a lot of it is also making sure both parties feel like they're on a level playing field, making decisions. So, especially for finances, more often than not, one person was the CFO of the family. They took care of the financial stuff.
Sure.
And maybe one person totally, they ran the family, they did the social calendar, they did other things. Now they're going through a divorce process where they have to understand the finances and how it's going to impact them and their life moving forward. So they might need a little extra support and question answering and communication and prompting for things to ask because there might not be context to some of the stuff they're being presented with. They might not know, like, is $5,000 a month good, like enough for me to live on? Or am I going to have to sell the house and move? It really is making sure they're grounded in a reality of their life and what it takes to support their standard of living or where things have got to give, because often things do have to give.
Mm,
Sidebar on that, when you do an out of court divorce, you have so much more ability to be creative with that, with your settlement and decisions than if you're in court. If you're in court, it can often be really cookie cutter, like just throw everything in a bucket and divide it in half and sell the house. So you can be a lot more goals based when you're outside of court. Now I got a little off track, so pull me back in. What was I?
no, that's you see, you're actually still on track because what I had asked you was how do you coach people to think to
Okay.
pull them away from just making emotional decisions to hey, process all of this information and try to make the best decision for your long-term future and your
Mhm.
family's long-term future. Because let's not forget, especially if there's kids, yes, mom and dad might be going their separate ways, but there's young people involved in this, and you don't want to that to me is the part it really I don't know if annoys me or I don't know what the right way to say it is, but it bothers me when I hear spouses talk negatively about the
Yeah.
other spouse to their children. It's
Yep.
like, hey, you married her, bud. Like you're the one that married her and knocked her up
Or
three
you
times,
can
or
like
vice versa.
yeah, you don't have to love them anymore. And maybe there's good cause. I am not,
Yeah.
in a place of judgment. But putting the kids in the middle is really just so detrimental. It's
Yes.
is really damaging. So, like, how to help people frame things is stay future focused, stay goal oriented. We don't get into who did what to who and how awful they were or why they're, it's not about why things fell apart. It's about how are you going to put them back together separately. And then as co-parents in different households for your children. And some of it is really practical, like what is the context of the money situation? You know, helping people make expenses or budgets and understand that and feel comfortable with it. Helping them know how a settlement is going to impact them not only at the time of settlement, but we can project forward 5, 20, whatever years. You know, what's your net worth going to be with this settlement versus this settlement? And sometimes that really helps support conversations go more smoothly if the person paying can see they're still going to be okay and the person receiving can put in context what they need and not just get like, I want to win, I want a big number. Because too much of switching to court-based, that is really about winning. And someone will be like, I want $20,000 a month in support. Well, why? What are your expenses? Because it's a big number, because I want that. But if the person who is paying the support makes $26,000 a month, that's not reasonable. So
Mm.
we talk about context and impact on people. And a lot of it is really helping people walk down the road of their own emotions. So I had a client a while back who was very, very angry. Her partner had gone outside of the marriage, was in a new relationship, spent a lot of family money on this relationship, whatnot. And she wanted him destroyed. And she would say it like, what is your goal? My goal is he loses his job, he loses his license, he loses everything. That is my goal. And we would talk through it. Okay, then what would happen? Well, then he would be as embarrassed as I am. Oh, then what would happen?
Mm.
Well, he would know how I feel. Then what would happen? And once we talked through it and talked through it, and this was over a little bit of time, it wasn't like, oh, yeah. She also realized, well, if she destroyed him and he could no longer earn income, then he couldn't have, and especially if he lost his license to practice,
Mm.
and he wouldn't be able to support their two small children, and that would have a great impact on her. And so it's like talking through that, yeah, this is the gut reaction, and then what? And then what does that mean? And so on. So it's not going, oh, don't feel like that, be logical to her anger. It's like, okay, let's dig in. Let's talk about why you're so angry and let's talk about what that means to you and let's talk about what you think would make you feel better and process it. And I think that's another often missing part or misplaced part of what goes on in divorce because someone will be that angry or upset because often divorce is the result of someone doing something that really hurt the other person's feelings.
Yeah.
Um, and then they'll try to talk to their attorney about it. Well, the attorney is not a therapist. The attorney is an attorney who's billing a lot more than a therapist, likely. And the attorneys I know get really frustrated when clients treat them like a therapist because that's not what they went to school for,
Hmm.
school for law. And yet, that's the way things come out. And it kind of keeps people not in their lane. So then that person who's trying to lean on their attorney to tell them about what horrible things their going to be ex-spouse did is not getting the support they need from that attorney. And the attorney is sidetracked from what they are really good at doing, which is practicing law. And things tend to unravel because they're not tended to. But if that same person had a therapist or a coach that they could talk through that stuff with, and then they could go to the attorney and say, okay, this is what I decided that it is in my children's best interest to spend the majority of time with me. So let's talk to the going to be X about that in our negotiations because he's spending all of his time with his new paramour and they like to go on vacations every week, whatever it is. But that's really more in the attorney's purview.
Hmm.
And then the person's emotions are being taken care of where they should be taken care of. So it's not impacting their decision making and logical functions as much, but it's all kind of integrated.
Yeah, it's impossible to separate, but you've got to kind of manage the whole thing through the process. And so you're a certified mediator, so you mediate a lot
Mhm.
of these things. How what do you think the biggest challenge is? Well, let's start with the mediation process itself, and then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of
Okay.
your experiences in mediation, if that's okay. What does a mediation process look like for a couple that's going through a divorce?
So it looks very different depending on your mediator and your location. And these are good questions as people are looking to mediate with someone. They're kind of good cues or questions for them to ask. So there's shuttle style mediation, and that is more often practiced by attorney mediators. And I think of that more as the let's make a deal kind of mediation. It doesn't necessarily have context. Usually people are in two different rooms, and usually what it looks like is, so have you ever bought a car at a dealership?
Oh yeah, sure.
Right? So you're sitting there with the salesperson you worked with, and he's all like excited and like, what's your offer for the car? Oh, I got to go back and talk to my sales manager. And then they disappear for half an hour or whatever. And they come back. They're like, oh, the sales manager is the bad guy, but here's the counter offer. And then that goes back and forth and back and forth. Shuttle mediation can be like that. So the mediator goes into one room and says, what's your offer? And then they take the offer to the person in the other room and say, here's the offer. What's the counter offer? I'm oversimplifying,
Yeah,
but the goal there is get a deal. The goal there is not, are we meeting needs? Are we considering goals? It's get these people to agree to something and then write it up and file it. That is shuttle mediation. And that's also more of a business style mediation
right.
as opposed to a people, personal mediation. So um, you can also mediate in the same room and have it goal-based. That is more of what I practice. I rarely, if ever, do a shuttle mediation. Like there's got to be good cause. Um, because we don't lose things in translation then. And one party is hearing what the other party has to say, hopefully, with the help of the mediator, who can sometimes calm things down that are triggering, who can clarify, like, this is what I heard you say. Is this what you meant? Without the other party being, you always refer to me in the third person or whatever pattern they had in their marriage does come into the room. It's to be expected. Those aren't, they don't go away just because they're getting divorced and
Mm,
it might escalate. So what the mediator can do is help them hear each other, help them understand what the goals of the other person are or is through the eyes of a third party. It helps calm things down because people aren't nearly as likely to be inflammatory or explode if there's another, it happens, but if there's another person in the room, then it's more likely that they take a breath before they say some things. Um, But key in mediation is giving people options, helping them see different sides or shift the lens or be creative about what they might need or want so that they can then come up with their own solution. And for me, one of the hardest parts is you can't and shouldn't say, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea, do this, don't do this. As a mediator,
right.
like, and I spent years consulting and advising and telling people what to do. And it's been a journey and a really good one, but it is a hard fought skill to sit back and encourage and assist people in speaking for themselves and honing in on what they really mean or want instead of falling into patterns and things like that. So like top line, broad strokes, a mediator is a neutral party that helps people come to an agreement. And then underlying that, there are many different styles of mediation, and it really depends on what's practiced in your area. Um, Mediation in Chicago, where I came from, is very different in my experience than mediation in Chattanooga. So that can impact things. And then just talking to the person who's the mediator. And it can also be impacted if attorneys are involved. They might have their own mediator they prefer to work with, and the clients might have very little say in it because the attorney just says, no, this is what we're doing.
This is what we're doing in terms of who they work with,
Yeah.
or the yeah.
In terms of everything,
Oh, really?
yeah, there are some attorneys that like some of my best friends are attorneys. There are some attorneys in family law who are truly saints. They're amazing, the work that they do and how good they are at it. And they're just like any profession, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And then there are some who I've seen them tell their clients, like, you shut up and let me do my job. But it's their client's life.
Right.
And the client is sitting there confused with questions, and they are told literally, shut up and let me do my job. This is not for you to say. Like, what kind of is, in my point of view, like the client ought to be able to have an opinion about what their decision is. I had
Happens
a
in their
client
life.
once, but
What happens in their life? They probably should have
yeah,
a little say in that.
yeah. I mean, it's scary sometimes. I had a client, she found me after a mediation, and her attorney was in the mediation. And her ex-husband offered her $80,000. And they'd been married just under 20 years, I think. How she homeschooled kids, she was not working outside of the home. Um, and it was a mediation, it was shuttle style, and the mediator came in and said his offer is $80,000. And her attorney goes, "Oh, good, you'll get some money." And that was it. And she, good for her, was like, not comfortable with this. I don't know what that means. Context. It was missing context. Um, and she ended up ending that mediation, and we worked together. She got a new attorney. In fact, their marital estate was about $1.3 million. That was all marital. So $80,000 was a very, 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 very poor offer.
Hmm.
Alimony. And she, in that case, had an attorney who was like, just be quiet. Let me do my gig. You'll get some money. I'm out of here. He hadn't even opened her file. He knew nothing about her. That happens
Lord.
too frequently. So the more people are informed about their choices and the more people are grounded in their empowerment, responsibility, what they need, their rights, they can know all of that and make decisions based on that without going to court. But the whole let's make a deal approach, I find it scary because I just want to go, what are you basing that on?
Yeah. Right. I mean, and that's the thing is in any legal process. And so like I've just negotiated a ton of things in my life. And I don't know if that's because I'm always willing to ask questions or I don't know why. I was winding up in those situations and then I wound up in a profession that required a lot of negotiation. And that's fine. And like I tell people all the time, they're like, I don't like to negotiate. I'm like, are you in a relationship? They're like, yeah. I'm like, you negotiate every day. You just don't
Yeah.
call it like, do you have
Might
kids?
be where you're going for dinner, but
Exactly. You negotiate every day. If you've got kids, you just don't know. One of my favorite sayings, a guy I used to work for is a multi billionaire. He would say, "We all think we're such great negotiators, and then we go home and our kids out negotiate us every day."
oh,
So
don't I know it?
let's.
Or just wear you down.
It was a
Like,
great
give up.
perspective when he said it.
Yep.
Like I'm not nearly as good as I thought I was because he's 100% right. I'm a soft touch for a few people in this world, that's for sure. Um, but what I try to encourage people to do is just get all the facts and then try to think about them rationally. And
Yeah.
that's hard to do in the situation when it's the most important person in the world to you at that point, and it's the penultimate relationship in your life, which is now coming to an end. So it's got to be difficult to get people kind of, I don't know if detached is the right way to say it, but to park those emotions to the side and think about things from a rational perspective. I listened to a divorce attorney who goes on podcasts. And he's a funny guy, but he seems like a good attorney. And let me just take one step back. I love what you said about attorneys because it applies to anyone, any
Yeah.
business, any profession. half the people in that profession are below average. Just that's math. It is what it is.
It's
Um,
mathing for
you
sure.
know, but he said the worst experience he ever had, it was a fairly well-heeled couple that was divorcing. And it would been just a dogfight through the whole process. But they had finally gotten to a point where they got down to, believe it or not, an air fryer. Like they had literally made decisions on everything. And he
Yep.
said, I literally had Amazon on my phone and I said, I will buy everyone in this room
A new one.
an air fryer if you'll just sign these fucking papers. And they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because there was some emotional attachment one way or the other on this air fryer. And he said, it just, you can't
That's
sometimes
interesting.
yeah, you just can't get people past the emotional part of it. So you were going to say something when I was talking. What were you going to say?
Oh, I don't remember, but that just reminds me of I have had cases, and this is actually the one where I did resort to shuttle style because they couldn't be in the same room. It got down to salt and pepper shaker. That like it was from one side of the family, but the other person was really attached to it and always used it. It was a salt and pepper shaker, and they were just hung. And that's not what it was about. It was
Yeah.
really about this made it real for
Yeah.
them, for this particular couple. The salt and pepper shaker was the last thing. And once they figured out what to do and stopped arguing about that, they had no more reason to talk or argue. So it was an interesting thing to watch because it was more of hanging on to their relationship, even as that relationship had turned really adversarial, but they were very in pattern and they were very comfortable with their fight. Um, and you could just see that they didn't want to let go of that
Mm,
because then there's a lot of decision making to be made. If you're not acting like that, if you're not that person, who are you? What do you do
right.
to fill the space? And that's where it can cause a lot of introspection.
So it's funny because if and I tried to explain this to people, and like you said, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but I like to think I'm not an idiot. Depending on the day you talk to my wife, she could agree or disagree with that statement. But um, I try to understand what drives people because if you understand what drives their thought process, then you can kind of help them think about things in a different way. And it's not my job to tell people what to think. I try to teach people to think critically so they can make the best decisions for
Mm.
themselves. That's always my goal, at least. And so, if you understand how the human brain is wired, it hasn't evolved much from caveman days, and it's really wired to keep us alive. That is like primary job one. And so it hates change. It hates
And
all
avoid
change.
change at all costs.
Yes,
Yes.
any change. It could be good change. It doesn't
It's
matter
still change.
because what I'm doing right now has gotten me this far. If anything changes, I don't know if that's true or not. That's how your brain operates.
Yeah. Safety.
Yeah.
It
In its perspective, that is safety. That right? Because we're still around. Yeah, and so it's
Well, that is also why a lot of people stay in bad relationships.
yeah,
It's kind of the known, even though it's really uncomfortable and maybe sad and depressing, maybe dangerous. It's still known, and the unknown can be more dangerous.
yeah.
Brain can think so. So it's hard to
Let's
change.
yes, it is good or bad. Like it's difficult to drop a bad habit. It's difficult to start a good habit, for example, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there's nothing easy about either of those things in general.
Yeah, we start our mediations when people are doing informed mediation, which is our whole process. We start with values exercises so they can try to figure out specific to them, not the world at large, not what their spouse thinks of them, what their values are, what is most important to them. And then that becomes guidance for the whole process. But we also ask them to acknowledge what their going to be ex-spouse's values are and what's most important to them and why they might be positional about that. And that helps people a lot to be like, oh, okay, now I can see. where they're stuck on something in a conversation because of past experience they've had or something that triggers them. But bringing empathy into mediation, which shuttle style does not have, can be really useful.
Yeah, I mean, so it was interesting because I do my research ahead of having guests on, and so you have so many different qualifications to work through almost anything related to the process of divorce. So you're a certified divorce financial analyst,
Mhm.
you're a certified mediator, you're a divorce financial analyst. You've got your FINRA Series 63 and 65, life and health insurance. Also, you've got teaching degree. So that brings like a modicum of expertise in all of those subjects because I think it was Albert Einstein that said if you can't teach it to somebody else, you don't know it that well yourself. Or if you want to learn it better, teach it to someone else because it'll force you to learn it.
Yes,
So you've
it
gone through
breaks
this.
down.
So you've been involved in so many parts of this process for a while now. What's the biggest thing that surprises you about the process, or what's your biggest learning from all this experience
Oh,
you've,
you froze.
oh,
Oh, you froze for a second. I heard for a while.
oh, so, what's your biggest, what's the biggest thing you've learned? What strikes you the most from all of this experience you've got working through this process with various people?
That's a really good question. I think my biggest learning, so there's book learning and certification learning and rule learning and all of that. But my biggest learning is to not be judgmental, to understand it is not my place to tell anyone what to do, that I have not walked in their shoes and have no idea what their lived experience is as I work with people through this. And that my best place is to help them understand themselves and make their own decisions. But it's like I said, it's been a journey to not, I was a consultant. I told people what to do. I'm really good at looking all the facts and saying, you should do this as a financial advisor. Here are your finances, here are your goals, here's a plan, you should do this. Mediation is exactly the opposite. It's a very concerted effort to stay out of their business and help them sort it out. Like not tell anyone what to do,
Right.
but give them a way to picture it for themselves, give them examples, which is a lot of teaching, so that they can see like, oh, that's what that means. Or if I made this choice, these other things will happen. And now I have context. I understand it. It's not just, you know, divide everything in half. It is, okay, you're getting back into a career. So what's most important to you? Is it education? Are you going back to your same career? Are you going to need liquidity? Often in divorce, and this is very stereotypical, it'll be the mom needs to keep the house and keep the house for the kids. Well, do you talk to the kids about it? Maybe they hate the house and they would love to live in a condo that has a pool.
Mm,
Maybe mom doesn't want to mow the lawn. Maybe dad loves the house and wants to keep the house. Like helping people discover what they really want instead of what society says they should be doing is a big adventure. It's very gratifying. Like in this bad thing that sucks, that is divorce, people can do a lot of discovery. And my biggest learning is to like be non-judgmental and let them. And I've been in the room where people agree to things that in my head, I'm like, oh, that's a bad deal. But they have all the information. They're making their own decision and they are informed. So I need to just sit back and not tell anyone.
yeah.
I don't know what else is going on in their world.
Yeah. It's,
Did I answer the question?
you did
Did
totally.
I go astray?
Absolutely. No, you got it. I love that. It's, I hope I never ever go through this process. If I
Me
do,
too.
because my wife leaves me, I would not leave my wife. But uh she invested in me, and she's been kind of this. She was a stay-at-home mom, but is kind of the glue that holds all of our family together, not just my nuclear family, but extended family as well. She just is she's the most emotionally intelligent person I've ever met. And the people that know her lean on her for all of that. Well, it doesn't pay very good to be the emotional glue that holds everybody together, right? So she's married to me and I make pretty good money. But the only reason I was able to do any of the things I did was because she was there holding everything down and running the rest of our lives.
Mhm.
And so, in the event that it all got torched or had to be broken up, she deserves anything she wants, the way I look at it. And so, if we went through this process, I doubt I would fight anything. I would just say, hey, it is, again, hopefully I never go through this. Hopefully I never go through this. However,
I think, in my experience, the vast majority of people who decide to divorce have the outlook that they do not want to have the other party living under a bridge eating cat food.
mm,
They want them to be okay. And they want to know they're going to be okay. That's most people. And then they get dumped into a court process that is adversarial from the get-go, that pits people against one another, that's all about winning and losing. And then it degrades. But most people don't need to go that route. Most people, given the proper support, having decided to divorce, can figure it out and really don't want to destroy the other person. Some people do. Some people are like the person I told you about where she started out and was like, burn it down. But most people aren't. They just want to move on with their lives. They want to feel like they got a fair, whatever that means, or equitable
yeah.
settlement. They want to understand what they're agreeing to, and they want their kids to be okay. And it's interesting to me a little bit that I said that last because it's the first thing everyone says. It's about the kids. I want the kids to be okay. But in practice, it can go sideways and a lot of things become about the money.
I'm laughing at that because I run grocery stores. That's the company that I run. We have grocery stores. And what people say they want and what they actually want are two very different things. So people
Mhm.
will tell me all the time, I want more organic options. Well, I can tell you that our
But where are the
organic,
Reese's cups?
that's exactly right. The organic lettuce doesn't sell nearly as well as the Coke or the chips or the pizza or the other things that are not very healthy for you. But I am not the arbiter of health. It is not my job to say,
Right.
hey, you really should eat better. We actually do that. We have recipes for people to make healthy
Mhm.
foods. We have resources we can connect them to if they're not sure how to prepare, like protein, for example. You know, there's a lot of young people today that wouldn't know how to make a rib roast if you put a gun to their head. You'd have to shoot them. They wouldn't even know how to start. And or a turkey, right? Since we're coming up on Thanksgiving
Yeah.
here. And talk about a ton of cheap protein. If you just made a turkey once a week, good Lord,
Yeah.
you
And
could
cut
eat.
that baby up.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But people don't know how that works. And so I'll get asked publicly, how come you don't have more organic stuff? And I'll say, because it doesn't sell. Like I understand what people say when we're sitting here in public, but that's not how they vote with their dollars. And so I follow the sales trends because that's what businesses do. And so it was interesting to me when you said, take care of the children last, even though it's the first thing most people come to you and say, but then they don't act like it a lot of times, at least in my experience, right? You see their emotions get the best of them. And that's what I try to explain to people is nobody is all good and nobody is all bad. Nobody. Like, I don't care. Mother Teresa had some bad things about her and whatever. Insert vile person here. They have some good things about them. You might not know them and they might not be outweighed by the terrible things that they do, but everybody's got some good and some bad. Excuse me, and some bad. But when you catch people in their worst moments, and that's what you do, you deal with people in some of the worst moments of their life, right? And so it's hard you got to give them grace, which
Right.
like that's kind of your role is to give them grace, but also kind of redirect them down a more productive path without telling them what to do. That'd be very challenging. I think that'd be very challenging
Yeah,
thing to
it's
do.
more like helping them see it,
Yeah.
helping them see that there is a more productive path and they do have choices and they're not locked in.
Yeah. So if you were gonna pick the the first three things, so let's say someone realizes, hey, you know what? My marriage is coming to an end. I'm going to have to wind up getting divorced. If you were going to pick the first three things you would coach someone to think about or do, what would those three things be?
It goes back to the three P's, figure out your purpose or
Yeah.
goals, figure out how you want to go about it. Ideally, you're figuring that out with your going to be former partner, and then get a team of people, purposely saying team, to support you where you need it going through it or support you and your family. Um, but to be really mindful about it. So I know when I started through the divorce process, I still had two teenagers and I immediately got them into a therapist. And thank goodness we saw the person that we did because she counseled me. I was doing it for me. I was checking, like, this is what I should be doing. I should be taking, my kids didn't need a therapist.
Mm,
So me taking them to one, and especially if I had forced them to continue going, thinking that it was in their best interest, could have been more damaging. So the thought might be, oh, that's exactly the right thing to do. Except for my kids, this woman was like, your kids take longer, this therapist, kids take longer to adjust to change and things. And by bringing them here, if you're saying then this is a big deal, you have to go to therapy, you're
mm,
making it a bigger deal than it is for them. And you're also making it real and it might not be real to them yet. So really be mindful about who you're using and bringing in. Be mindful about the attorney you hire. Be mindful about how you use them. Be mindful about, do you need a financial analyst? You should not use your joint financial advisor to do your divorce settlement. It's a conflict of interest from the get-go.
hmm
Whether you're going to continue working with them or not, they should not be the one counseling either of you on your divorce settlement. It should be another party. Ideally, it's a party who is trained in divorce because other financial planning is completely different. Um, but I think the starting place is take a breath. Like once people decide, like, this is it, we're getting divorced, they tend to be like, put the foot on the pedal, we're going full speed ahead, like 0 to 60. Except when you do that, when you jump right in, you could be jumping into a situation that doesn't really support your family, your finances, your process, your goals. So if you come to the realization your marriage is ending, either together or you've been told by your partner, or you're the one who has decided, stop, breathe, figure out how you want to unravel and get yourself educated um, about what you're getting into with those choices you make. Like it's different in different jurisdictions, but where I live, a divorce is usually about a 2-year process if you go through the court route. And people sign up for that and don't realize it. Or they'll pay an attorney retainer, say it's $5,000, and then their partner has to get an attorney. So let's say that's another $5,000, but they don't realize that that's just the retainer. And what it's really going to cost is closer to $20,000 each, but they don't know because they didn't ask. So ask as many questions as you can. Another thing I would say is be really, really careful about your sources
mm.
as you start this. Like people will go to the internet and search. Be careful about where you're searching. Like if you are getting divorce advice that's going to impact the rest of your life from anonymous member 527, think twice, right? It's true. It happens all the
I
time.
know that's why I'm laughing because I know you're right.
Oh, it's so it actually breaks my heart.
Sure, yeah.
And I will look at some of these Facebook groups that are divorce groups, and there's really, really, really bad and erroneous information on there. So someone will go on and ask a question, and someone, maybe 50 people will answer it, and they are definitive. Like, here's what you do. Here's the answer to your question. Let me shine the
Exactly.
light. And it's wrong. And it's wrong. And you don't know who those people are. So don't get your advice there. Go to podcasts like yours. Look for experts. Look for people who are trained and vetted. Get good advice. Don't get it from your neighbor because your neighbor had a different situation than you did. And the right attorney for them might not be the right attorney for you. And maybe they needed to go to court because there were hidden assets or things like that, but you
Mm,
don't. So don't go. Like, really get true with your situation and do a little of your own matchmaking. What best matches you where you are without just plopping yourself into the process as we as a society have come to accept, which is crazy in my mind. Like that the majority of people getting divorced follow this process that basically turns over the reins and the power to their personal lives to a legal system, which is essentially a criminal system, is mind-boggling. Like, why are we saying this is okay? And yet we do.
yeah. Just one comment on what you just said. I agree with everything you just said, and I will back it up with I tell people you should be immediately suspicious of anyone who proclaims to have the single answer to any subject. Like my I wish it was so I'd say it jokingly and I wish it was a joke, but it's not. I tell people often, you should have known me when I was 20 because I was so fucking smart when I was 20. I knew everything. You didn't even have to ask me. I would just tell you I knew everything. That's how smart I was.
I get
And
it.
yeah, I've gotten a lot dumber over the years because it turns out I don't know a thing.
Yep.
And there are millions of really smart people out there who will give me tons, like you, who will give me tons of information if I'm willing to ask a couple questions and then shut my mouth. And so I tell people the minute someone proclaims to have the definitive answer or the definitive process, that makes me very leery. Their process may be great for some people, it may be great for them, it may be great for lots of people. But generally, life is shades of gray. There's rarely a right answer
Yeah.
to anything. And that's why I love the way you talk about your approach, which, by the way, you've written a new book on this called, I love the title, Oh Shit, I'm Getting Divorced.
I still to this day have mixed feelings about the title. Um, did we talk about this? The original title was How to Divorce with Dignity and Grace. And we tested the title and people threw the bullshit flag. And we're
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's cute. That's not how I feel. How I feel is, oh shit, I'm getting divorced. And that became the title.
I think you got it right for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I think you got it right. But walk
I
us
did
through.
get How to Divorce with Dignity and Grace in the
I
subtitle.
did see that. I did see it in the subtitle, but it's not the headline. And I think you got it right by putting it in the subtitle. But walk us through a little bit what made you put it all down in writing and then talk a little bit about the book. What was the process like to write it?
It was a big process. What made me want to put it down is kind of scalability. I have very definitive beliefs about how we can change the divorce process. And there are a lot of things I wish I knew when I entered into the process that I wish I had a resource or guidance on, or a way to think about it, or a lens to look at what I was going through. And instead, I felt like I was just bumbling around in the dark, doing the best that I could and drinking way too much wine. It was a mess.
Right.
Um, so the book became first an idea, and I used to do webinars and things like that, but it was like, can I just make this resource for people who have questions as they're going through divorce? It's rather comprehensive, but ideally, it's a thought provoker for people, and it can be used like if you're just interested in finances or in how to think about parenting or resources for that, you can use it as a resource chapter by chapter, or you can read it as a book. Um, but my call was just make information available to people that's been vetted and comes from experience, as opposed to anonymous member 457 or whatever that is.
Right.
The process was, it was good in that it caused me to really put a critical eye to what I went through, what other people go through, trying to make a point of view pertinent and thoughtful. It's not a like, here's how you do divorce. It is, here are things you should know as you go through divorce. That ideally leads people to think about what they want and how they want to go through it and have that be their own decision. Um, and the writing of it was actually so much easier than the editing of it.
Mm.
Working with an editor, it was very tedious isn't exactly the right word, but exacting, I would say. It was a surprisingly long and exacting process, but really good. It was a good experience. And I think my next thing, it's rather dense, the book. So one of the projects coming up next is to divide it into a smaller, more palatable books. And I really also want to do a course that does the same thing, but is more interactive, that will walk people through how they want to make their own decisions as they go through the process. And hopefully help them gain control and spend less money.
Yeah. So you just said something that's interesting to me. The process, I guess, and I can't remember exactly what you said, but you going through the process. There's a legal process by which you have to follow certain steps to wind up divorced from your spouse,
Yep.
right? But short of that, the way you experience divorce or the way you go through this process with the person that you're married to, a lot of it's up to you, is it not? Like how you choose to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most people know that. I think they think there's a series of steps that everyone has to follow. And
No.
if you don't follow those steps, then the whole process doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
Do you think people think that?
I think people think that. I hear the two things I hear most often are from people who are already divorced. I hear, I wish I knew you when.
Mm,
I wish I knew this was available in me because I had a horrible experience, which I can relate to because I had a horrible experience. So I will hear that. And then from people who talk to me currently who are thinking about divorce or looking into it, most often they say, I didn't know I could do it this way. They just didn't know. And they can. Like they can get good guidance and make their own decisions and stay out of court. It's available to them.
yeah.
And then they need to be comfortable with and informed about the information they need. Do you want to be in that style of mediation if you stay out of court where it's just let's make a deal and you get to an agreement after an 8-hour session or a 10-hour session and you're done? Or do you want to be goals-based and put things in context and have discussions about that? Or do you want to turn it over to an attorney and let them negotiate with another attorney? But all of those things are available to them. And then it does come down to within the parameters of where you live. Some places have lengthy waiting periods, like a year, or rules like you must live apart for a year before you can file. Some have no waiting periods. That's all driven by the state you live in.
That's wild. I did not know that. So there's some places where they say, we're not going to let you get divorced until you live apart from each other for a year. Did I hear that right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. And then there are others like you can stay married. I've had clients stay in the same house after they're divorced, and they do it for financial reasons, but they move through the divorce. Um,
I had a friend that did that actually. I had a friend
yeah.
that they were divorced, but they still lived together because they couldn't afford. I shouldn't say they
Mhm.
couldn't afford. They it would have been really bad for them to do
Right.
it another way financially. So
They
they had
figured it
four,
out.
yeah, they had four kids. They lived in the same house, but they dated other people. It was very unique. Very unique.
Yes, and it really, I think, is what works for you and your family.
Yeah.
What, figuring out what is best for you. Going back to your question about, you know, do you have to do it this way? Yes and no. You have to follow the rules of where you live. And other than that, you have a lot of leeway in how you go through the process and what best suits you.
Yeah, you had referenced that your divorce process was not great.
Mm-mm.
What about it was not great, other than the obvious that the whole process sucks to begin with?
Um, it was very contentious, and we did an out-of-court process. We did collaborative. Um, I would say that I did not feel we got goal-based professional guidance. There wasn't a lot of context. Like we would spend, there are four paid professionals in the room and then us. And you'd spend 2.5 hours on a meeting talking about something that value-wise, let's say it was worth $200. I mean, going back to the salt shaker question or the air
Right. Yeah.
fryer. And the fees for that meeting would be, say, $2,500.
Right. Yep.
And I would sit there like, is anyone else seeing this? Like, why are we talking about this thing at the expense, the return on investment was poor, on at the expense of $2,500? Like this doesn't scale, it doesn't make sense. And I felt there was an awful lot of that. There was a lot of money spent on professional fees and a lot of time that pretty much ended us where we started. It wasn't a super creative agreement. It was just drawn out. And I have actually had attorneys tell me that they will look at a couple's asset sheet or balance sheet and pretty much know what they're going to bill for that case and how long it's going to take.
Really.
Which is a sad observation, but that came directly from an attorney. Um,
So I think what you're saying is if the net worth of the couple or the marriage is X, in
the fee,
general, the length of time and the fees wind up being this in these situations. That's what they're saying.
yes, that's what this attorney was saying, and say this was an attorney up in Chicago, and saying it as a representative for her field. Um, I don't know, not an attorney. I work in a flat fee, so, and that's one of the reasons I do it. I want people to know what it's going to cost. Um, there was just so much. We don't speak. We don't have a good relationship. It's just, I don't know. I wish I had a better way to encapsulate it after all these years, but I just think it was a waste and a shame that it wasn't handled with more dignity and grace,
Hmm.
that it wasn't forward focused, that it was still, even though it was out of court, and this was the team that we used, it was still very much about winning and losing. And part of that can't be controlled. I don't think my ex-husband was one of those folks who cared much about my well-being past the divorce. Most of the people I work with in mediation are not like that. They both, like I said, they don't want to destroy the other person.
Right.
They just want to move on and they want to make sure they're both okay and their kids are okay. My experience was not that. Um, yeah. But I also didn't really have a good resource or know that there were other options. I was not, I did not have a strong ability to kind of stick up for myself. So I settled for much less in the agreement just to get out of it. And that's kind of where part of my, like, I will listen to someone agree to something and think in my head, oh, it's not a good deal. And I'm sure my attorney would tell me that, like, what you're agreeing to is not a good deal. But I just wanted to move on with my life and be done. So
Yeah.
for me, it was. it was a good enough, to move on. So I don't know. I'm rambling a bit. I'll have to work on a more concise answer for that.
No,
But
the introspection is good, and I think it's a good example because you're fairly far removed from your divorce,
mhm,
and you've got a ton of experience now. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but your negative experience drove you to build the business that you've built now
yep.
and say, hey, other people don't need to go through this. I can help them with what I've experienced and what I've learned, and I want to do that.
Hmm.
And you still don't have all the answers, right? I mean, it's
No,
you're still introspectively thinking, hey, what what's a what drove this? Why did it go this way? Why did I feel that way? Why did I react that way? Those aren't easy questions to answer.
no. And I really think I started this, so it's been a decade. I started this thinking, how do we take the process that is and make it better for people going through it? And I've had a mindset shift now that is more of how do we reinvent this process rather than just trying to improve what is bad.
Mm,
That makes sense.
yeah.
I think it could use a lot of reinvention. There's just, there is no sense in pitting families against one another and it being so very expensive to go through the process.
What
There's a better
what
way.
like what would your top three suggestions be for changes to this process if they came and said, "Hey, we're going to blow the whole thing up, and we're going to go with Brenda's plan to revamp the divorce process in the United States"? What would your top three suggestions for changes be, knowing what
That's
you know
another
now?
really good question. Um, I would say we inform everyone of their options or everyone is educated about their options rather than defaulting to the court system. And that would get those people, again, I think the vast majority of divorcing people who are able to make their own decisions out of the court, free up the court, leave the court for the people who need that to make their decisions. So I think that would be the first, educate people on their options, allow them the resources and information to know what a reasonable settlement is based on the laws of their area. Even if they do go to court, the likelihood of a decision falling well outside of a fact pattern isn't very high.
Mm,
If you're in a 50-50 state, you're probably going to divide your assets 50-50.
yeah.
There might be things to niggle about or whether it's separate property and so on, but every state has guidelines. So rather than taking everything and just turning it over to the process to decide, if people were first informed about the different ways they can go through it, knowing that out of court is absolutely an option, and then giving a framework that isn't based on this is just how we do it here, but is based on this is the information that you need to make your divorce decisions. You need to know what your assets are. You need to know what your debts are. You need to know what you earn or can expect to earn. You need to know what it costs you to live. And that frames all of your decisions. People will go through a divorce in court and never answer those questions. Not really. They'll fill out a financial affidavit, but it's not
Yeah.
put in context. So I think context, let's say, take your data, your fact pattern for your family and have a framework to put it in context. So I think that would greatly improve process overall for those cases that go to court too, because often that doesn't happen. Or in mediation, often they're not prepared for it. Context, huge. And then what would a third thing be? A third thing would be that would greatly improve outcome if parents had more robust education as to how to co-parent when they're in separate homes.
Mm,
I think that would be life-changing. Because kids can bear the brunt of divorce and And parents don't intend to hurt their kids, but they might inadvertently hurt their kids. And there are lots of ways that it's done. Parentification of the child in the divorce, like treating their teenage daughter like their ex-spouse and giving them all those responsibilities, or parental alienation, where you essentially are teaching the child to side with you for whatever reason. And sometimes it's just because they never got attention from that parent before, and now they are. And that parent is getting the attention by talking about what a horrible person the other parent is. That's really bad for the kids.
Yeah.
So if parents had more robust options in education about what makes good co-parents, and those are a lot of things we talk about in process, and it's even little stuff like, how are you going to introduce a new partner to your kids? And are you going to let your former partner know that this is at play? How are you going to handle discipline between households? How are you going to handle technology between households? If parents are given the opportunity to make those decisions, and the parenting plans I've seen often don't have that stuff in it, I think the outcome would be much better long-term for families and especially for kids. I can get on the soapbox on that one. We don't do a good job of teaching people. We don't teach people to be parents. We certainly don't teach people how to be divorced parents.
Yeah, it's do you remember the movie Parenthood? It came out in the early 90s, Steve
Mhm.
Martin. I love that. I love that movie. It's funny, and I think they did a good job of encapsulating a lot of really true things in life. And Keanu Reeves' character winds up being a parental figure for the son who's essentially been abandoned by his father that ran off with his dental assistant. And he gets done talking to the kid, and he's a kid himself, and he's just kind of a knucklehead, but he's a good guy. He's just not real worldly at that point in the movie. But he says, you need a license to drive a car. Hell, you need a license to catch a fish, but they'll let any jerk be a dad. And I'm not picking on dads. It's just a good line from the movie
Right.
that illustrates what you're talking about. There's plenty of moms that are unprepared. Hell, we're all unprepared. We don't know what the hell we're doing when we have kids, you know? You
Oh,
just
it's
have
so true. And I think I'm touching on what you just said. I had such a bias when I started this practice. I thought it was going to be women. I thought it was going to be women seeking out mediation and wanting out of court settlements. Absolutely 50-50. Just as many men find me and work and are the instigators of the mediation process as there are women, which I think is lovely. And I am somewhat ashamed of myself for having that bias to start with, but it's been a good lesson. It has.
Ugh. Look, I think it's easy to speak in generalities, and stereotypes exist because a lot of times they're true. That's why they're called stereotypes. But there's exceptions to every rule. But when I characterize men in general, they tend to want to protect, they tend to want to provide, they tend to want to lead generally.
Mhm.
And so I would think, and again, I don't have experience in this, but I would think that when a marriage breaks down, I would feel like I had failed at those things because I had allowed things to drift so far that I couldn't get everybody back kind of in the same boat. But then I think about like my experience. My parents divorced right after we got married. And so I was 21, 22, somewhere in there. And they should have gotten divorced 10 years earlier because they spent 10 years just despising each other, but
Mhm.
staying in it for the kids. You know the drill. Um,
Yes,
and my
it's
older
very
sister
common.
and I, yeah, right. So I have three sisters. One of them is older than me, and then two of them younger than me. And we had very different upbringings because when my parents went through what we called sunglass summer because they always were wearing sunglasses because they didn't want us to see them crying. And
Mhm.
so we called it sunglass summer. But like, that's a good example. Like you think you're fooling us? You think we don't know what's going on? We can see what the hell's going on. You're not
Yeah.
fooling anybody here with this charade. And they were doing the best they could. I love my mom and I love my dad. Like I've got no ill will towards either of them at all. But it was very obvious what the situation was. And at one point, my mom decided to, and I don't know how it worked out, but it wound up that she was not at the house for 3 or 4 days, and we were there with my dad. And I love my dad, but he is not. a very emotionally intelligent guy. He's just not. He does the best he can with what he's got. He's just playing with a pretty small toolkit. And he was trying trying to trying to explain the situation to us. And me and my older sister were like sitting there with gritted teeth, like, how much longer do we have to listen to this shit before we can just go live our lives? And he got done and he said, do you have any questions? And my older sister goes, yeah, what's for dinner? And I'll, I'll never forget
Yeah.
it because for us, it was just kind of factual. Like, we know where this is going to wind up. It took 10 years, but we knew where it was going to wind up. So you don't know how kids are thinking about stuff like you talked about. Like, you took your kids to therapy and the therapist said, hey, your
Don't
kids,
do that.
yeah, your kids are all right. They don't need this. You might need it, but they don't. And like, how do you navigate? Like, it's difficult to navigate. I get why it's hard to
I
navigate.
think you navigate it by being curious and asking questions.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Like what if your parents had asked you all? What if they had talked to you about, their relationship and the family and I mean, not like, hey kids, do you think we should get divorced?
Right.
But like that happens with the house, the whole mom keeps the house thing often. What if they talk about it? What if mom doesn't really want the house? And what if the kids don't really care about staying in the house? What if they would love a new bedroom? What if, I don't know, I think a lot of it is be curious, don't be locked in,
Yeah.
figure out what the next steps are.
Yeah, asking people questions is always such a good way to go. I love when you were talking earlier about, okay, so if this happened, why do you want that? Then this would happen. Then what would happen? Then what would happen? That's the way I coach people around issues around anxiety and self-confidence and procrastination and the things that kind of hold people back from pursuing the things in life that they want. Play it to its natural end. So let's just work this all the way to the end. And
Yeah.
my wife is a very anxious person by nature. She just has always been. And so we're a good match because I'm not. And she's very untrusting, and I'm the most direct and open person in the world. So we match up really well in a lot of ways. But when we were first got together and she would be anxious, I would say, so what are you worried about? And she would say things. I'm like, no, not good enough. What, like, specifics? I want specifics. And she would tell me whatever the problem was. And I would say, okay, then what's the worst case
Mm.
scenario for the thing you just described? And she'd say, okay, I got it. I said, no, say it out loud. I want you to say it out loud. And so she would say it, and I would say, then what? Just like
Yes.
you. Then what? Right? Then what? What the world's going to keep spinning. The graveyard is full of indispensable people. Uh, we always think that things are catastrophic. There's only one thing that will wind up being catastrophic for all of us. We don't know what it is or when it's coming, but
Right.
there's only one thing we're not going to get past in our life,
Yeah,
right?
the other question I love, if I ever get a tattoo, this will be the tattoo. So I'll keep you posted. Is it true? Just is
Yeah.
it true? Someone will often like, she just wants blah, blah, blah because blah, blah, blah. Is it true?
Mm,
And maybe the other person is like, no, that's not why. That's not what I want. This is what I want. Is it true? Like if there's a lot of preconceived notion going on in this world, knowing what the other person is. Do we? Is it true?
yeah. It's always good to ask questions. A funny anecdote on that. I was sitting watching something with my wife, and I can't remember what it was, but the subject of the book, Lady Chatterley's Lover, came up. And I said, I've heard about that book, but I've never read it. There's a lot of books that I've heard about that I've never read that I should read just so I can say that I've read them and
Hmm.
understand what it is about them that has made them famous. Like, when I say Lady Chatterley's Lover, most people have heard that book. I don't know a lot of people have read that book. And so my wife starts describing the book to me. And I'm like, wow, this is really impressive. And I'm like, my wife is a reader. She reads a lot, but that's not the kind of book she would normally read. And I said, hang on a second. Did you read the book or did you watch the, the movie? And she kind of she gets a grin on her face. We love to joke around. We have a great relationship when it comes to those types of things. And I said, I don't want to wind up in a situation where I look like Rachel in the class because Phoebe told her there were robots in Jane Eyre, So just let's be clear what our source material is here when we're
Mhm.
going around talking about stuff like we're experts on.
That's a good life lesson for everything, right? Especially right now. Like, is it?
Yeah, it's very difficult now. There's AI has gotten so realistic so quickly. It's very hard to tell, even on videos now,
Mhm.
what's real and what has been AI generated. And I am so hesitant to make any proclamations that this is true or this actually happened without being able to verify it two or three different ways. And I am skeptical and contrarian by nature, and this advancement in technology has made me even more skeptical and more contrarian. And that's not always good, by the way. You say those things, oh, it's good, you never get fooled. Oh, I get fooled plenty of times.
But it's
Um,
good. It's really good to know your source. Like I remember my
yeah.
dad, um, in the last years of his life, he would make pronouncements, and it was something he had heard somewhere, and he would just make the pronouncement that this happened. It's like, I don't think it did. It came from the interweb. It happened. Like, I don't think it did. Didn't
It's
happen.
like the commercial, the French model, right? The guy that looks nothing like a model. He's a French model. It says so on the internet. And he goes, bonjour. But he looks like me. Clearly not a French model.
Oh,
Oh my goodness.
wow, it's getting dark here. I know I didn't have my overhead light on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that time of year too, where the days are pretty short. So
I'm gonna pause because I know you can edit this and turn the light on.
yeah, go ahead.
So home again.
Oh,
I
one
know. Look
sustain
at
one
me light.
sustaining
I'm
note, the
sorry,
light
it's
from
gonna not
above.
be good for your video, but
No, it's all good. No worries. Um, so where do you see this going with technology? That just my AI comments made that pop into my head. Do you think
Mhm.
technology is going to have a big impact on the divorce process?
So I have so many ideas there. I think that it can. I think that it can have a very positive impact well outside of how it's being used now, which is essentially to do paperwork faster.
Mm,
And I get a lot of things that are meant for attorneys just because of the area I practice in, even though I'm not one. But there are a lot of things, just how to streamline your paperwork or do briefs faster or things like that. So I think the majority of AI now in this field is just being used for efficiency.
yeah.
I think it can also be used for coaching. I think it would be brilliant. This was one of this morning's ideas to have it help create some kind of filter and communication between parents.
Mm,
So they could say what they're thinking and have it reworded to be there's a guy, his name is Bill Eddy, famous for dealing with high conflict people and methods for dealing with high conflict people.
yep.
He uses BIF, brief, informative, factual, and I'm forgetting the last F, but it'll come to me. But basically, it's a way to frame communications so you're not getting entrenched in that high conflict pattern.
Yep.
If you used AI to do that in communications between parents, I think it would smooth out so many things that, again, impact children negatively, but also impact the recipient of the message. Like there can be so much inflammatory communication after people are in separate households that's not even intended to be. It just comes across that way and is triggering. So what if AI helped that not happen?
Yeah, almost like a filter.
Yes. Yeah. Like you would filter a photograph, but you're filtering your messages to your former partner so that it's less inflammatory and more factual and direct. And like you could set your parameters about how it was supposed to be or what can and can't be discussed. People talk about it, but they don't in fact do it. So that's just an idea. But I think we've only hit the tip of the iceberg as to what AI can do. I think the whole, like, we can't ignore it. it's definitely here to stay and growing so much more quickly. I think it might end up replacing jobs or positions in the field or taking over and simplifying a lot of things. Can AI do the work of a paralegal? Maybe, if properly programmed. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like the capabilities and the applications feel limitless to
Hmm.
me right now. This feels like 1994 again when the internet was just becoming mainstream, where like you could never have imagined all of the things that we're doing online now in 1994, you know?
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
AI
and
is,
this has only been 3 years.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's headed down that road for sure. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's all good. Like, the
Nothing is. It's
uh,
neither good nor bad.
yeah, that's the truth. But I think one of the big challenges we have in society now, like the reason I love doing the podcast is two things in particular. I get to meet so many interesting people and I personally learn so much from doing the podcast. So like I've learned so much more about the divorce process, and hopefully I never wind up going through it, but I'm going to know people that do, and I can be a resource for people. And hell, I could just even give them your website and say, "Hey, give Brenda a call." Start
Yeah, do
there,
that.
right? Exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
and the more people you talk to, you would talk to another mediator or divorce attorney or coach, and they're going to have a completely different take than mine.
yeah, and that's fine. That's
Yep.
that's that's knowledge. That's information that you can use to make your decisions. But it's that communication. That's the part that concerns me about technology taking over. I saw an interview with Elon Musk, and I think Elon Musk as a thinker is unbelievable. Like you could, anytime that guy starts talking about theory, I listen because I think he's brilliant when it comes to that. And again, nobody's all good or all bad. I certainly wouldn't take parenting or relationship advice from Elon Musk.
Hmm.
He's got like 13 kids with a bunch of different people, and that's not something I'm interested in. Good for him. He's got $1 trillion. He can do whatever he wants. Got it. But that's not where I'm getting my
Yep.
relationship advice from. But they asked him, he was on a podcast, and they asked him, will AI make us
I'm
smarter?
sorry, I'm trying to turn this off.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
You good?
Yes, it was on Do Not Disturb and my phone still rang. I don't know why.
Yeah, no problem. So Elon Musk on this podcast, and they asked him, "Will AI make people smarter or dumber?" And he took a 30-second pause to think about what that was going to do. My concern is about the interpersonal communication, and I've already seen such a degradation of younger people's ability to communicate person to person, face to face, and I think that's a big problem for us as a society. I think it's one of the big problems in relationships. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I still think pretty traditionally as it relates to how relationships unfold. In general, men initiate conversations and contact, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think a lot of them know how to do it. And, when I was, let's say and I've always liked girls. I just picked an awesome one, and I've been very happy for 33 years. But I've always liked girls. Was never a problem for me to go, hey, that's a good looking girl, even at like 12. So let's say I want to take a girl out to a movie. You had to pick up call a random number with no answering machine, no caller ID, no anything, and you didn't know who was going to answer. If it was, let's say, I wanted to call up Stacy Johnson and ask her out to a movie, I had to be prepared for Mr. Johnson or Mrs.
Hmm.
Johnson to answer the phone, and I had to pass that litmus test to get to Stacy. If I was a knucklehead, Mr. Johnson would just say, "You're not talking to my daughter," and hang up the phone. Or
Right.
Mrs. Johnson would say, "You're a creep. You're never talking to my daughter," and hang up the phone. And so you had to be able to present yourself in a way that you passed that litmus test so that you were allowed to speak to the person you actually wanted to. And I think a lot of that's missing in our society now. And like I've heard you talk about, that seems to be a real possible area of breakdown in this whole process. It can be difficult to communicate with your soon to be ex
Yes.
spouse, right? And that I don't know how you get through. I think it's a big issue, but I think it's germane specifically to what we're talking about. And it makes me wonder how technology will affect that.
Yes, I agree. And then just because there's a flip side to everything, I
Yep.
think, well, what if that is the scenario? Could AI then be a coach to people? If someone is like, I'm challenged with relationships and I don't know how to call Stacey Johnson, but I really want to go out with her. Can you resource some of the best relationship experts and their content in the world and using their voice coach me through how to do that? That could be a really good use of AI instead of just like a faster Google.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. It is interesting, but yes, breakdown in communication is certainly prevalent in divorcing people,
Yeah.
and it
Yep.
doesn't get better usually post-divorce. But they aren't given like a lot of this is just people are not given a toolbox for this.
Yep.
That's why the first call is people going, I'm going to get divorced and I don't know what to do. Like they don't know their options. They don't know the first step. They don't know what to do. They never did it before, most likely. They're in the dark. So,
Yeah. It's
toolbox.
it's not something you want to get a lot of experience at. You're right. You don't want to be like a seasoned divorcee, right?
No, you do not want to be a seasoned divorced human, but to have the tools available to navigate that process the way you want to without tons of clutter would be good.
Yeah. It's there's so many different things that lead to divorce. Um, I don't even know what the right question is, but from from everything that you've got a lot of experience with a lot of couples that have divorced, and you've gone through that process yourself. From everything you've seen and all the knowledge that you've accumulated, if you could give young couples or new couples one piece of advice as kind of the North Star to think about or to try to keep their eye on to avoid having to go down this road, what would it be?
Interestingly, the first thing that comes to mind is be aware of what divorce is. Divorce is the antithesis to marriage, right? So, all the things that happen in divorce, if you protect yourself from them in your marriage, so finances are a big precursor to divorce. If
Mm,
people disagree about finances, I think it's the second most prevalent reason for divorce. So, if you know that's a reason for divorce, make sure you're communicating about finances. Make sure if you're not on the same page, you figure out how to deal with it. Sometimes it's okay to disagree as long as you're aware of it and know what the implications are of it. And sometimes it might look like maybe one person really likes to have things organized and computerized and the other person doesn't. Well, what's the path of how do you meet both of those needs? Well, if the organized person organizes it, are they bothering the person who doesn't care about it being organized? No, they're meeting their need for organization. That might be the answer. It's kind of simplistic, but if you look at the things that cause divorce and then figure out how to avoid those tipping points or areas of conflict, then I think you're setting yourself up likely for a really good relationship. If you ignore things and don't tend to them like anything else, they're going to get worse. If something is a little seed of bad and you don't take care of it, it will grow into a big giant tree of bad.
mm,
So, what causes divorce? Um, People not communicating and growing divergent in their interests certainly does. Mostly, like that's just it's this general bucket of incompatibility. So, how do you remain interested and compatible? Do things together, have hobbies together, have outside interests as well, have things to talk about. Don't be your entire person, partner's life. Bring something to the partnership. So
mm.
maybe all those are good things. Finances, we talked about. Infidelity is a big cause. So it's really simplistic to say, don't do that. But if you don't have a healthy home life and relationship, one might. So have a healthy home life and relationship, have a romantic relationship, know what your partner needs, ask them, be curious, all those things. Like it's a lot, but maybe it all just boils down to ask your partner what they need and be a partner in doing that and supporting that and supplying that. Because if they need something and you're never giving it to them, you're likely teeing yourself up for, at the very least, not a as good a relationship as you could have.
Yeah.
Or maybe down the road, divorce.
Yeah. It's funny when you were saying that. So Charlie Munger recently passed away, Warren Buffett's partner, right hand guy at Berkshire.
Yep.
And I loved listening to him speak because he was so kind of reasoned in his approach. Obviously we're talking about investments here and not affairs of the heart, but I think it applies when you just said largely the same thing he said, which is he started off before he got into business and became an attorney and an investor and all the things that he did. He was in the military and he was the guy that routed planes in World War, would have been one or two, whatever one it was. And he said he started off by thinking, what could I do that would get these guys killed? And then
Don't
how
do
do I,
that.
then literally don't do that. Stay as far away from that as possible. What can I do to avoid that? So it was really risk mitigation. How do I stay away from the bad things that could really damage this mission and not bring my guys home? And then he applied the same thought process to investing. What could I do to lose this money and not do that? So it's interesting to hear you say like largely the same thing. What are the things that the the most common things that lead people to need your need your
Right.
services, right?
Don't do that.
Don't do those things. Know what
Yeah.
they are and avoid those things.
I mean, it kind of sounds simplistic, and I'm sure for many couples it's just too late. You know, if they're 30 years into what is a bad relationship, are they going to like reinvent it? Most likely not, unfortunately. But you asked the question, a new young couple.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
in that
Yeah.
space, don't do the things that will cause friction, divorce. Like be in your relationship.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you get to a point where there's too much water under the bridge and you can't
Mhm.
unring the bell, put the toothpaste back in the tube,
Put
whatever.
the genie back in the bottle,
Yeah,
all of it.
whatever your analogy is for passing the point of no return, right? Once you've passed the Rubicon, it's too late. Yeah, but it's super interesting. The whole thing for me is I know that the best things in life are not monetary and or tangible in value, right? It's about relationships and
Yeah.
experiences. And so I've been,
Settled. No one on their deathbed ever wished they worked more.
yeah, and you don't see a Brinks truck following a hearse to the cemetery. Like I've never once seen it happen. And the legacy that you leave behind is all of the lives that you've touched. And it might sound corny and sentimental. One of my favorite movies ever is It's a Wonderful Life because
Mhm.
George Bailey gets to see, hey, look at all of the good things you've done, even though you didn't get to go travel the world and build all the things that you wanted to build, but your existence touched so many people. You really are richer than most people because most people didn't have this impact on so many people that you did. And hopefully people can see that. And even when it gets to the point that they do wind up needing to separate, hopefully they can do it in a way like you're talking about with grace and with dignity. And instead of making it difficult and adversarial, work through the process in a way that is best for everybody involved and gives you the best chance to rebuild your life coming out the other side. Because you got to rebuild your life, right? I mean, that's not you did it. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. But it was a good thing to do. It really was. Like going through it was not fun
Yeah.
or good or pleasant or anything. But where it led me puts me in a much better place. And I think it can do that for a lot of people, kind of a reset. And to get really real about, are you going through this world on autopilot, or are you going through this world making mindful choices about how you want to live, how you want to be, who you want to be.
Yeah, totally. That's the point. Like literally, literally the point of our podcast, right? And
Yeah.
the thing we tell people is you have to decide what that is for you. Maybe having a huge career is really important to you. Awesome. But you should intentionally choose that and you should set your life up to go after it. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's, I don't know, whatever. Maybe it's philanthropy. It doesn't matter what to me, what it is you want. I just know that's why so many people today are anxious and depressed and unfulfilled is because they're not living the life that they want to live. And there's something holding them back from doing that. And all we try to do is open their eyes to that and say, you could change this, but you have to
Yeah.
change it, right? You have to be the outside force. Like a body at motion will stay or sorry, a body at rest will stay at rest unless acted on by an outside force. You are the outside force in your own life. And that can be
Right.
difficult for a lot of people.
Right. Because we circle back to we are hardwired to not want change.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I love it. Absolutely love it. And so you just touched on one of the main things we talk about is we have awesome people like you come on and talk about their experiences and it's a wide ranging group. So we've had people that have talked about all sorts of subjects and it's funny to me that I'm doing this podcast because I am not a touchy feely guy, but we have people that talk about sometimes pretty heavy subjects, sexual abuse in their kids, incest, losing children, losing family members, really difficult things they've gone through in their life, and how they've rebuilt their life or moved forward from those things and built a life for themselves that they really love. And there's a couple of things that are always true, and I rarely make global statements, but I'll make this one. Life is going to kick you in the teeth sometimes. It doesn't matter if you want it to or not. It's going to, and that might come in the form of a relationship or your professional life or your health or someone close to you. It's coming. It just is. And how you react to it is the most important part. And when people learn from that and then take those learnings and apply them to build the life that they want, they wind up in a good spot. The other thing, and I'll note because you're motivated, your motivation to start the business that you're running now. And before we get off, I want to make sure we cover the ways people get in touch with you and they know that the link to your book will be in our show notes so they can go down and check it out if they want. But you're motivated to help other people. And that's something that we see to a person that's what helps them get past these really dark things is they act intrinsically, but they're motivated by something extrinsically that's bigger than themselves. And if you can learn to motivate yourself by something that's bigger than you, doesn't matter what it is, it's as long as it's important to you and it motivates you, that's when your life is really going to take off. And you just kind of talked about it. And so I try to illustrate that whenever our guests talk about it. So, but speaking of which, what's the if someone is at a point in their life where they think they might need your services, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Through the website, it's Bridging Divorce Solutions. And they can get information there. Shortly, they'll be able to join our newsletter there. They can make an appointment to have a free clarity call. We can send them information. It really is structured to be like meet you where you are. And there are some times where I'm not the right person to help them. And if that's the case, then we'll do our best to get them resources. So, like I said, I don't do discernment. I don't help people decide if they're going to divorce. I do work with people to help make the divorce process better if they have decided. But maybe someone is in a place where they need discernment. I'll refer them to someone who specializes in that.
Mm,
Or maybe they need, who knows, a forensic accountant or what have you. Depending on their circumstance, we really want to look at where they are and help them figure out what support they need, what information they need, what steps to take next. So they're owning it and understanding it. But yeah, the book's on Amazon, so that's an easy order. One thing I should note is And this is actually, do I have a minute for a story?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when the book came out, I got an email from a friend who had purchased the book because her husband came home and said, "Do we need to talk?" Because she bought the book on Amazon and he saw the book purchase. And she bought the book to support me in the book launch. And he was concerned that she was researching divorce. So it's funny, but some people can't buy the book on Amazon because they are getting their ducks in a row. They are looking for more information, but they don't want it to show on their shared record. So if
Sure.
that's the case, they can reach out to us and we can send them a PDF file of the book that they can read that won't have a financial trail that they might not be ready for their spouse to see. So do know that they need to know that's available to them. Um, and then in the newsletter, if they sign up for a newsletter, when we have events, so we'll have webinars on divorce and what people should know, co-parenting, finances, then those will all be in the newsletter. So if they are interested, they can sign up for that. It's like once a month via email, and that gives them access to continued resources.
That's good to know. I'm actually going to go sign up for your newsletter when we're done here.
Soon. She's working on it now. I'm getting that link
Got
on
it.
there.
I was going to say, I went through your website. I didn't remember seeing a spot to sign up because I usually, for all of our guests, I like
Yeah,
to see
we're
what they're
redoing a
doing.
couple of things. That's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Totally get it. Totally get it. But yeah, guys, so you don't have to remember that. We'll put it all in the show notes. So if you need to get in touch with Brenda or her team of professionals, then we'll have that in the show notes. We'll have a link down there. And like she said, if you need to be discreet about purchasing the book, which is a good tip, by the way,
Mhm.
there's other ways to do it. You can get in contact with her, and she can help you with that. But Brenda, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely loved our conversation. Completely worth the wait, and I'm
I
really glad
did
we. Yeah,
too.
I'm really glad we made it work.
I am as well. And you're just a joy to talk to. So no wonder you love doing the podcast.
It's I appreciate the kind words, and like I said, I learned so much. I get to meet so many awesome people, and it's interesting how many connections I've been able to make from doing the podcast. Because someone will say something, and I'll go, "Oh, I had a guest that does that. You should talk to so and so."
Mhm.
And that it's just been really kind of cool to kind of see how that works. And people from all over the world, by the way. So we've got lots of folks from Europe, lots of folks from Australia, a couple of folks from Asia, lots of people from Canada, then all over the country as well. So it's just wild to me how it's taken off. But it just goes to show you that people are generally the same. And I think it's important people remember that, especially with as divided as many subjects are today. People still generally want the same
They're the same,
things.
and connection is important.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So that's a great place to leave it. I really appreciate your time, Brenda. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night. Okay, guys, there you go. So super good stuff from Brenda there. Love her approach. She wants people to go through what is a difficult process in the most effective and useful way possible for all parties involved. And that can be difficult. We're talking about a very emotional subject. We're talking about the end of a relationship. There's lots of things involved, financial, there's other assets involved, there's children involved, there's families involved. And that's a difficult process. And you can just tell from Brenda's approach that she's coming from a really good place and can be a really effective coach and mediator and can help you through this process. So, if you are in that situation, we highly recommend you reach out for Brenda. If you want to learn more about the process, she's written her book. You can buy her book. We've got that link in the show notes, and just really, really appreciate her spending all the time she spent with us on the podcast tonight. So, thank you again, Brenda. Great job. Loved having you on. James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are there. Links to all of our social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to on our website. And we're going to keep having awesome guests like Brenda on that are going to give you tons of useful information depending on what your situation is in life. We've got other episodes where we talk about ways that you can build a life of meaning and purpose. We give you action items that you can incorporate into your life right now to start building the life that you want. It's all great stuff. You don't want to miss any of it. Make sure that you catch our next episode. We will see you there.